Kim SeoJoon focused his mind, thinking deeply. Then, without hesitation, he quickly pressed the agree button. The first part of the official test began. The scenery around him changed unpredictably. He held the gold bar tightly in his hand, sweating as he waited for the monster to appear. Suddenly, a burst of speed shot past Kim SeoJoon, causing him to stagger slightly. He gritted his teeth and tried to throw the gold bar at the monster, then immediately pulled out his wand and sprinted in the opposite direction to distract it. Unexpectedly, the creature had grown 9 additional heads, multiplying its strength 9-fold. Kim SeoJoon had only 30 minutes to complete the test. It seemed like he was caught in an incredibly unlucky situation. The advisor, with a bewildered look, seemed innocent compared to Kim SeoJoon, who was now screaming in frustration. "Didn't you know?" the advisor asked, looking puzzled. "I thought you knew. We wouldn't ask the same questions as the last test. People would just remember the answers. Is that why you brought the gold bar?" Kim SeoJoon was dumbfounded, realizing too late that the advisor should have told him this earlier. He had no choice but to run while trying to fend off the barrage of magic the monster was spewing at him like rain. "I just need to increase my score by 3 points in each subject. No more, no less," Kim SeoJoon thought, gritting his teeth, determined to endure everything for the sake of his precious scores. Regaining his composure, he used his strength combined with light footwork to launch continuous attacks. The monster, not to be outdone, opened its mouth in anger, baring its fangs, and spewed a stream of poisonous mana, nearly hitting him. A moment later, Kim SeoJoon was actually struck by one of its cuts on his shoulder, causing excruciating pain. He collapsed, screaming in agony, unable to do anything else. Kim SeoJoon had failed the first phase of the test, with 28 minutes and 47 seconds remaining. Seeing him lying on the ground, crying, the advisor approached and asked gently, "Does the monster's poison hurt that much? This creature is ranked first in poison, so it's pretty painful, right? Pretty intense, isn't it?" the advisor added, observing Kim SeoJoon's state. Kim SeoJoon felt like he was about to meet his ancestors. Recalling ancient mythology, he remembered that when Chiron was poisoned by this monster, he couldn't overcome it and begged for death, not wanting to be immortal anymore. "I understand why he asked for death now," thought Kim SeoJoon, his face pale. After some rest, he finally managed to get back on his feet. This was his first time trying, but his learning speed was increasing. If he kept at it, he could achieve the karma-free training simultaneously. Although he could stop now, the advisor wasn't sure if he would have enough points. Despite his fear, Kim SeoJoon pressed the button to continue the test. The 9-headed monster reappeared, even more ferocious. This test was about his combat skills, meaning he could only score high by defeating the monster. Steeling himself, he threw his sword in a perfect arc towards the monster. Just as he thought he had decapitated one of its heads, a new, more formidable head grew in its place, leaving Kim SeoJoon speechless. After a terrifying explosion caused by the monster, Kim SeoJoon found himself flat on the ground, stunned. Only 19 seconds had passed. He lay there, unsure of what to do. In the previous exam, he had scored 4.2 points by fighting with the Longinus spear. He wasn't sure how the scoring worked, but if it was based on the effectiveness of his attacks, he felt cheated. Kim SeoJoon scratched his head in frustration, wondering how many heads he had to chop off to defeat the monster. The advisor suggested looking up online guides, but they weren't much help. Even if you lose points, you can still score high based on the strategies from the commentaries. "It's your decision," the advisor said with a bright smile, which only annoyed Kim SeoJoon more. After countless failures, Kim SeoJoon had grown thick-skinned and fearless. He cursed the annoying advisor under his breath as he charged forward. After numerous grueling battles, Kim SeoJoon finally reached a score of 8.8, an improvement of 4.6 points, which made him immensely satisfied. The advisor praised him enthusiastically, making Kim SeoJoon's chest swell with pride, though he knew the advisor often mocked him more than praised him. "Anyway, I've achieved my goal of gaining 3 extra points in the first subject. Let's continue," Kim SeoJoon told himself determinedly, even though he felt he had botched everything up. Kim SeoJoon, pale and kneeling, sank into the ground with a despondent look. 9 days ago, he had taken the second test of basic endurance, which required him to hold up the sky in place of the god Atlas for an hour. The strain nearly broke his back, and he only managed to score 5.9 points, an increase of 2.2 points. 6 days ago, he competed in a test of eyesight against the incarnation of the god Argos, nearly losing his eyeballs. He scored 4.2 points in reflexes, an increase of 1.9 points. 3 days ago, Kim SeoJoon endured the mana drain of Ashley for the allotted time, achieving a mana score of 1.6 points, an increase of 0.4 points. After adding up all his points, he was shocked to realize he had only 9.1 points, a far cry from his goal of 20.3 points, missing by 11.2 points. The advisor grinned, explaining that he needed to improve his score by over 50% to receive the event's reward. Sweating and feeling desperate, Kim SeoJoon grimaced as he started the 5th test. Determined to pass, the 5th test required him to listen to the Requiem of Archleech for a specified time. Thanks to his strong mind, Kim SeoJoon managed to pass this challenge peacefully after washing his hands with the song. In level 2, he had to banish a demon from the 9th level of hell that was controlling his mind. This challenge was a breeze for Kim SeoJoon, who didn't even bother listening to the demon's babbling. In level 3, he had to resist the temptations of the goddess Aphrodite. As she swayed closer, Kim SeoJoon wondered more about her scant clothing in the cold than feeling any attraction, thus overcoming the trial with ease, much to the advisor's amazement. Level 4 presented a cacophony of screams from the depths of hell, which he had to endure for a set time. Unfazed, Kim SeoJoon silenced the noisy demons with a few ignorant questions, leaving the advisor stunned by his unexpected prowess. In level 5, he had to resist the temptations of the Demon King's incarnation. The Demon King manifested human sins before Kim SeoJoon, causing him to break out in a cold sweat. Yet somehow, he managed to resist and overcome the trial. However, at the final sin of pride, Kim SeoJoon failed miserably. After numerous retries, he finally succeeded in overcoming the challenge. The next test was scheduled to take place in 3 days. The advisor was astonished to see Kim SeoJoon's progress, which had jumped from 15.5% to 31.7% in just a week. The progress in Hakwin's lectures was also remarkable, leaving the advisor in disbelief. Kim SeoJoon humbly attributed his success to luck. By the end of the day, he had achieved a mental score of 22.8 points, an increase of 13 points, a result so satisfying that he cheered loudly. A few days later, Kim SeoJoon received his final results. His goal was to improve by 70%, but he had actually achieved an 80% increase. This essentially translated to an 80% discount, allowing him to finally access Jetjin Daeseong's lectures. If not for his strong heart, he might have fainted from the excitement. "I'm just curious, what score do I need to avoid failing?" Kim SeoJoon asked the advisor. The advisor explained that he needed to score over 60 points in each subject, and even if his total score exceeded the required points, a single subject below 60 would result in failure. In other words, Kim SeoJoon needed a total score of at least 630 points. Hearing this was like a thunderbolt to Kim SeoJoon, whose total score was only 52.2, far short of the target. With his discount voucher in hand, Kim SeoJoon decided to register for Jetjin Daeseong's class. He found the meteor strike technique particularly appealing and tried to enroll. However, the system errored out, stating he needed the level 5 Jetjin Daeseong's advanced technique to participate. "Someday, I will learn the meteor strike technique," Kim SeoJoon thought, deciding to start with what he could. He registered for the introductory spear techniques and basic signatures of Jetjin Daeseong. The 5.4 billion won tuition fee made his hand tremble, but he reluctantly confirmed the registration. As soon as he pressed the button, his phone screen froze, causing Kim SeoJoon to panic slightly. If anything happened to his 5 billion, his life would be over. Just then, the screen displayed a burst of spell energy from Jetjin Daeseong's position. Finally, Jetjin Daeseong appeared to teach Kim SeoJoon. He instructed him in basic spear techniques and advanced skills, demonstrating the moves with remarkable proficiency. Kim SeoJoon watched in awe, his eyes wide with amazement as the system then set forth a requirement for him to perform Jechun Daeseon's ultimate technique, 100 strikes of the Gat technique. Kim SeoJoon took a deep breath, unsure if he could accomplish it. Indeed, from the beginning, he'd have been studying the basic class for beginners, but now, moving into the intermediate classes, his lessons were considered extraordinary. That's why the tuition was so high. It was a completely different level. He felt this more deeply than his advisor had explained. Afterward, Kim SeoJoon tried practicing with the staff, following the techniques taught by Jechun Daeseon. They were truly superlative skills. With just a few swings, sparks of magic erupted, causing the ground around him to crack. Kim SeoJoon stood there, mouth agape in astonishment, unable to believe the immense power of this magic. Meanwhile, at a nearby restaurant, representatives from the top 3 hunting academies, Aligon and Hunter Mills, were holding a meeting. The current situation of our top 3 hunting academies isn't good, someone said. They say that all 3 of our academies combined aren't even equal to one Dream Academy. Jin Yun spoke up. What do you think we should do? Jin Song replied, at the very least, we need to crush his fighting spirit. Jin Yun's calm response sent Jin Song into a fiery thought. If there were any mistakes, all the hunters could disappear. Jin Song also felt Jin Yun's argument was valid. The two were about to leave in frustration when Jin Yun mentioned an exhibition match, pausing for a few seconds. Jin Yun half smiled. Perhaps we should consider sending Li Huang this time. Back at Kim SeoJoon's location, he had turned everything around into rubble with just a basic staff swing, as if the power of a deity had erupted during his swing. Kim SeoJoon thought, even so, this technique consumes a considerable amount of energy. It truly lives up to the reputation of Jechun Daeseon's intermediate curriculum. Kim SeoJoon had participated in a super class on power for beginners, surpassing his own limits. Therefore, Kim SeoJoon currently had no other choice but to fight. At this rate, 10 would be difficult, not to mention 1,000. Kim SeoJoon sat on the ground, breathing heavily, deep in thought. Wasn't he also planning to attend a mana training session today? Kim SeoJoon had been making remarkable progress in his sessions with Hequin. If he could manage to attend both the mana class and the key cultivation class under the swordsmanship master, it might help him achieve his goals. The advisor suggested this idea, and Kim SeoJoon quickly regained his spirits. After repairing the surroundings, guided by his advisor, Kim SeoJoon decided to give the key cultivation class a try. Listening to the master's lecture, although his mind was buzzing, he grasped the basics. He understood that one part of the body was called the brain, or the mental area. Kim SeoJoon wondered to himself, the upper region is the brain, the middle region is the heart, and the lower part is the stomach. So summarizing this cultivation session, compared to mana training, cultivating Kai in the body will require Zhengjio. Accumulating this Kai is relatively straightforward but time-consuming. Safety lies in Qi cultivation, whereas effectiveness and safety are combined. That must be his point, Kim SeoJoon contemplated. Suddenly, the system displayed a lecture on Qi strength taught by a teacher. Kim SeoJoon felt something odd here. I can't participate in both lessons simultaneously, can I? According to Master Yeodong Bin, that was the mental area. So that meant the lecture on Boljo's steadfast mind could act as the top. He asked the advisor, is this steadfast mind something you need to learn in the super class? It could also be said that all super students have learned the upper level by using Boljo's steadfast heart, right? Does that mean that the use of all 3 upper parts is not impossible? The pace of cognitive progress in lectures, and I certainly need it, Kim SeoJoon decided. Looking at the screen, he said to himself, the other students of the advisor have only chosen based on their preferences until now. Kim SeoJoon now presented his cute face with his eyebrows sparkling, begging his advisor to help him ask the instructor if he could learn both. But money was the most worrying issue. Kim SeoJoon had just returned home when he spotted Park Soo-kun standing inside with 3 unfamiliar individuals. They turned out to be representatives from the other 3 top hunter academies. Upon seeing Kim SeoJoon, they hurried over to greet him. Kim SeoJoon couldn't fathom what the representatives of the top 3 academies were doing here. It turned out they wanted to invite Kim SeoJoon's academy to participate in a friendly tournament. They were visibly excited, but when Kim SeoJoon heard that there was no prize money involved, he quickly lost interest. In the end, he passed the responsibility onto Min-yul, leaving the representatives dumbfounded as their plans were suddenly derailed. Just a few minutes earlier, Kim SeoJoon's demand for a prize of 6 billion won had shocked and dismayed them. They hadn't expected him to be so money-minded. After some deliberation and hesitation, Jin-yeon finally spoke up, proposing to offer a prize but with conditions attached. They wanted Kim SeoJoon to decide the rules and conditions of the tournament, and they also insisted that all members of Dream Academy participate. Everyone agreed cheerfully, including Sukun, who even volunteered to join the competition. Thus, the prize was set at 6 billion won, as originally suggested by Kim SeoJoon. The tournament format was decided to be a doubles competition, not a team-based one, meaning the winner could take home the entire 6 billion won. From then on, all members of Dream Academy diligently practiced magic every day, driven not only by the prospect of the 6 billion won prize, but also by additional rewards: 4 billion won for second place, and 2 billion won for third place, making the total prize pool 12 billion won. Seeing Park Sukun putting in so much effort for him left Kim SeoJoon feeling a bit awkward. If she's doing all this for me, there's no need to push herself so hard, he thought. I've always received your help, but I've never done anything for you in return. At least I should repay the favor once. Trying to reassure her, Kim SeoJoon said, "You don't need to worry too much." Sukun quickly responded, "All right," then promptly ushered Kim SeoJoon out so she could focus on her training without distraction. Kim SeoJoon scratched his head and stepped outside, feeling that there were still a few things he needed to prepare for the upcoming tournament. At that moment, his advisor sent him a message, suggesting that he temporarily pause his mana course. The matter seemed complicated, and the advisor couldn't explain everything over the phone. Although Kim SeoJoon didn't fully understand, he decided to focus on his current courses to make progress. Several days later, on the morning of the friendly tournament, Kim SeoJoon's entire group arrived at the venue, which was as grand as a battlefield. The tournament, organized by the top 3 academies, drew a large crowd of early spectators, gathered around the entrances and exits. Sukun opened the schedule, revealing that the first round was a knockout competition among students from various schools. Suryu and Min-yul's representatives were engaged in a fierce martial arts contest, causing the crowd's chatter to abruptly cease upon the arrival of a particular figure. Surrounded by journalists and photographers, Hae-yuli, renowned hunter from Suryu, faced a barrage of flashing lights and questions. One bold reporter, perhaps courting disaster, asked about rumors suggesting she wouldn't participate in the tournament because of Kim SeoJoon. Lee Dyun paused for about 2 seconds, then managed a diplomatic smile and turned the question back on Kim SeoJoon, which left the reporters visibly flustered and tongue-tied. Witnessing this chaotic scene, Kim SeoJoon realized she was the famed hunter Lee Hyun had mentioned. Lee Min-yul tried to praise her, but was promptly teased by the only girl in Suryu's group, leading to a playful commotion between the two teams. This spectacle quickly caught the attention of the journalists, who then noticed Kim SeoJoon's group participating in the tournament, swarming around them like bees to honey. Kim SeoJoon could only smile wryly and led his team into the waiting area. The organizers informed them that personal equipment would be strictly prohibited during the tournament, and each participant would be provided with suitable gear. While the quality was decent, Kim SeoJoon's team wasn't entirely accustomed to using it. Meanwhile, Lee Min-yul and Suryu continued their boisterous rivalry, behaving like cats and dogs, causing a constant uproar that left Kim SeoJoon at a loss for words. Kim SeoJoon held the spear provided by the organizers, feeling a slight unease about whether it would serve him well. The first round matched him against a blonde-haired opponent, who looked disappointed upon seeing Kim SeoJoon's seemingly frail appearance. In his mind, he harbored dissatisfaction towards Jung Sae-do, who had withdrawn from competing upon hearing of Kim SeoJoon's participation, viewing him as incompetent. Why did they have to enforce a rule banning personal equipment just because of this guy? Muttered the frustrated opponent, Stepping back in hesitation, he resolved to make Kim SeoJoon realize who the true top-tier newcomer was, feeling determined and brimming with intense resolve. However, as soon as the match commenced, Kim SeoJoon vanished like the wind, leaving his opponent bewildered. Confusion turned to fear as Kim SeoJoon suddenly reappeared, launching an unexpected attack that left his opponent trembling. A massive shockwave emanated from Kim SeoJoon, rattling the ground and scattering dust and debris all around. In a final, direct confrontation, his opponent was so overwhelmed that he froze, unable to resist any longer. Victory swiftly tilted in Kim SeoJoon's favor within moments. It was then that his defeated opponent noticed the spear in Kim SeoJoon's hand had already cracked into pieces, much to his astonishment. He realized that it couldn't withstand the power unleashed by Kim SeoJoon. Reflecting on this, he lamented that he would need a new spear after each round if things continued like this. Meanwhile, Shuryu and Minhyul erupted in excitement over Kim SeoJoon's performance, and the internet buzzed with articles about his duel with Lee Hyun and predictions on who would emerge victorious. Comments flooded in, expressing wild anticipation for the outcome, even landing the discussion in the trending search suggestions. Moreover, the top 3 academies had pledged to cover all expenses incurred during the friendly tournament, a gesture aimed at attracting attention to Kim SeoJoon. Sukun remarked that this was likely because Kim SeoJoon was making a significant impression, both internally and externally, by challenging the perceived invincibility of Lee Hyun, previously seen as an insurmountable wall. In stark contrast to the jubilation of Kim SeoJoon's group, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation and support for his breakthrough efforts. At this moment, Lee Hyun was feeling extremely disheartened, weary of hearing Kim SeoJoon's name mentioned countless times in the newspapers. No matter how hard he struggled, in the end, he was just an ordinary student. Jin Hyun responded to his concerns about Kim SeoJoon, looking through the window from the room. He saw Kim SeoJoon chatting cheerfully, without a trace of tension, which only heightened Jin Hyun's anxiety. Meanwhile, the tournament and the search for the champion were still ongoing. As expected, Lee Minhyul had climbed to a high rank, and although Kim SeoJoon thought Shuryu would struggle, the girl fought remarkably well. As for Kim SeoJoon himself, by this time, he had already replaced 9 weapons, each costing up to 10 million won. The total cost of replacing all these weapons was likely to exceed 1 billion won. It was like digging a financial pit deeper than one's stomach, yet they couldn't refuse to replace a completely broken weapon like this. The organizer was sweating, thinking to himself at this moment. Kim SeoJoon requested to use his own weapon, causing the organizers to frantically consult their superiors to find the best solution. In the next match, Shuryu, who was feeling nervous and anxious, found out that her opponent this time was Lee Hyun. No wonder she couldn't calm down. Shuryu was probably under a lot of pressure. She hadn't been studying Saint's Law for long. Kim SeoJoon, seeing Suryu's anxiety, did his best to reassure her that winning or losing didn't matter. But after the previous match's incident, he felt he hadn't been much help. Many emotions arose when working together to achieve something known to everyone, and the feeling of success after improving one's skills. The whole process was truly comforting. Therefore, that's why he could feel a closer connection than anyone else. He had to demonstrate that he could also accomplish something, and that she deserved to accompany them. Suryo silently resolved. The sound of the signal bell rang out. Suryo immediately bid farewell to Kim SeoJoon and stepped onto the battlefield. Taking a deep breath to calm herself down, Lee Hyun made a grand appearance, making Shuryu worried again. After the signal to start, Lee Hyun quickly used magic to leap back like an arrow. Despite the blazing heat, Lee Hyun didn't even bother to move a toe, only using his contemptuous gaze to challenge Shuryu. Go ahead, try with all your might. By doing so, you'll realize just how insignificant you are. So give it your best shot, Lee Hyun arrogantly said, provoked. Shuryu was infuriated, gritting her teeth and swung her arms, using all of her strength to teach Lee Hyun a lesson. Why does everyone say such boring things? Lee Hyun remained calm as nothing happened, sighing. Shuryu, on the other hand, braced herself and spewed intense fear in all directions, all while maintaining a targeted lock on Lee Hyun, dashing swiftly towards him. The surrounding organizers were astonished. They couldn't understand why a mage like Shuryu would engage in close combat with an opponent like Lee Hyun. Shuryu charged, unleashing a flurry of attacks along with an endless stream of magical power. The audience became increasingly amazed as they witnessed Shuryu, a mere student, demonstrating such unpredictable and impressive spellcasting and movements. Typically, a mage's role in a team was to stand back and cast spells. But in real combat, could it truly play out that way? What if mana was disrupted? What if the mage was in a mana-restricted state? What would happen if there was a mana explosion, and the world was devoid of mana? What if there were no hunters to protect the mage? The reality was that situations could change at any moment. At the peak of the Great Flood era of mages, this was the combat method used by the Mage Saint. Kim SeoJoon observed and pondered. In the early days of the Great Flood era, the Mage Saint was known as a disaster. With that in mind, other countries referred to the Mage Saint as the War Mage. Lee Hyun waited for Shuryu to flail about for a while before finally drawing his sword. The force was so overwhelming that Shuryu coughed up blood. Despite her painful attempts to counterattack, she couldn't even scratch Lee Hyun. Without a word, Lee Hyun suddenly struck Shuryu's face with physical force, causing her to tumble down, knocked out. Everyone was left stunned and pale-faced at the sight. Just as Lee Hyun was about to pull Shuryu up and give her another slap, Kim SeoJoon and Minhyul couldn't bear to watch any longer and rushed over. At the organizer's reminder, Lee Hyun finally shoved Shuryu aside, straightened up, smoothed his hair, and walked backstage. Kim SeoJoon hurried to help Shuryu, who was now battered and bruised from Lee Hyun's provocation. Furious, Kim SeoJoon's temper flared, and he was about to charge at her, but Shuryu quickly stopped him, tears welling up and sobbing. She blamed herself for not being strong enough. After the fight with Lee Hyun, the healers arrived to treat Shuryu. Fortunately for her, the injuries weren't too severe. As for Lee Hyun, he only received a mild warning for his violent behavior. Lee Minhyul, in an attempt to avenge Shuryu, also ended up getting beaten badly. Under Shuryu's agitation, Kim SeoJoon tried to hold her back, urging her to let it go. The friendly competition then continued, but Kim SeoJoon could hardly remember anything else, not even the worried look on Sukun's face, or how many times he had to replace his spear. Finally, the much-anticipated match arrived, the match between Kim SeoJoon and Lee Hyun. Let me ask you something. Was it really necessary to do that? You are the most talented among professional hunters, so perhaps you don't understand the anger of having your future made a mockery of. The grim reality and despair of trying with all your might, but still being unable to move forward. But you know what? That despair is proof of someone's effort. And you trample on that effort. That's not something you can belittle, even if you have perfect skills. Kim SeoJoon spoke in one breath, making Lee Hyun's head hurt with annoyance. Are you done yet? Lee Hyun asked irritably. I know you won't understand even if I explain it to you. So try it yourself. I mean, do your best, Kim SeoJoon said sternly. Kim SeoJoon was tense, cheeks puffed with determination, his gaze sharp and cold, vowing to make Lee Hyun taste the dreadful feeling of failure. He seemed to get some praise from people, so he thought he must be something, right? Why that hypocrisy? When you beat those weaklings to appear here. Lee Hyun boasted, responding arrogantly. That's enough trash talk. The match officially began. Lee Hyun, too fast and too dangerous, immediately took a defensive stance. In contrast, Kim SeoJoon remained indifferent, which only fueled her anger. Furious, she drew her sword and charged straight at him. Kim SeoJoon quickly retreated, his body agile and nimble, easily dodging Lee Hyun's slashes as if it were child's play. His disdainful attitude towards her only made Lee Hyun angrier, and she increased her strength to the maximum. But to Kim SeoJoon, it was nothing more than a mosquito bite. Seeing Lee Hyun so desperate that she had to use a sword, Kim SeoJoon finally started to warm up, his terrifying and intense power making Lee Hyun falter. A super-powered mana attack from him sent her flying like an arrow. For someone as strong as Lee Hyun, this was a severe humiliation. Despite seeing Lee Hyun still able to stand, Kim SeoJoon continued to unleash incredibly powerful moves, giving everyone goosebumps. Lee Hyun was unique. Unlike others who needed to struggle and scrape by, she could reach the pinnacle effortlessly. In other words, she possessed extraordinary abilities. A genius always dominates the mediocre. Even when people praised her as the greatest hunter in human history, she felt neither pride nor satisfaction because it was merely a given. But now, in this solo match against Kim SeoJoon, she felt as if she was being overshadowed by him. Under Kim SeoJoon's rotating power, Lee Hyun was attacked to the point of coughing up blood. Just a slight twist of his spear left her dizzy and disoriented. The next blocking move churned the earth and sky, causing Lee Hyun to collapse, finally ending with a spear thrust that shattered Kim SeoJoon's spear. Lee Hyun had truly run out of ways to fight back. This is impossible, absurd. How could this be? There is no way he is stronger than me. He can't be stronger than me. Is there really someone more skilled than I am in this world? How can this be? Lee Hyun thought, gritting her teeth in anger. Still, she clutched her sword tightly, intending to stab Kim SeoJoon. Unexpectedly, he struck her face physically, making her blood boil. Given the current situation, Lee Hyun had a weapon, so she clearly had an advantage over the unarmed Kim SeoJoon. More importantly, it seemed Lee Hyun had no intention of giving up. Kim SeoJoon was continuously beating Lee Hyun like a punching bag. Maybe you don't know this, he began. But out there, many people accept being beaten down in order to strive and rise. Life is not easy. They don't have innate talent like you, so they have no choice but to train hard every day. Lee Hyun didn't want to hear any of this. She kept swinging her sword wildly, but none of her attacks hit. But you know what? Those people don't care about counterattacking or winning. Even if they get tormented every day, what they care about is how far they've come, not whether they win or not. So no matter how many blows they take, they never fall. They move forward step by step, enduring hit after hit, and they keep getting back up from one fight to the next. To an outsider, it might seem calm, but in reality, there's a raging storm inside. The only way to win a seemingly impossible battle is to keep fighting with resilience. That is the true genius, Kim SeoJoon said, looking straight into Lee Hyun's swollen face, speaking coldly. Seeing Lee Hyun still stubbornly insisting she was the best hunter in history, Kim SeoJoon responded mockingly, "How ridiculous! I've already made you wobble with just my bare hands. What kind of genius are you? These people are not for you to trample on and sneer at." With the strength of a god, Kim SeoJoon delivered a single punch that officially defeated his opponent. The moment Lee Hyun kneeled at Kim SeoJoon's feet, everyone around was shocked. In the first round of the friendly competition, Kim SeoJoon officially won. The situation had come to a point where the three top academy representatives were restless. They didn't want to admit it, but they had to acknowledge that defeating Kim SeoJoon was impossible. He had made Lee Hyun dizzy with just 3 moves. This was not the level of an ordinary student. While everyone was in despair, unable to imagine confronting Kim SeoJoon any further, Jin Hyun suddenly came up with an idea. We were defeated by Kim SeoJoon, but we weren't defeated by Dream Academy, right? He grinned maliciously. After that historic match, Kim SeoJoon was swarmed by countless reporters like an idol, making him run for cover. Seeing Kim SeoJoon return to the room, Soo-kun eagerly informed him, "All of Korea is in an uproar because of you. Comments and articles on the internet are popping up like crazy. Everyone is praising you to the skies." But among the praise, there were also mocking comments. Park Soo-kun may be the granddaughter of the Sword Saint, but she's only a B rank, clearly riding on Kim SeoJoon's coattails, which made him furious. Glancing at Min-yul, Kim SeoJoon felt a pang of sadness seeing her trying to smile despite her sorrow. Aside from that, we need to think about how to approach the second match. There's already a list of members for the upcoming dungeon raid, Park Soo-kun said. Kim SeoJoon panicked, realizing that both Suryu and Min-yul were in the hospital. Who would team up with him now? Soo-kun replied that she would check with the organizers. She then cheerfully said goodbye and left the room. Exhaustion finally hit Kim SeoJoon's entire body as he collapsed onto the chair to rest, berating himself. Why did I use divine power at the last moment? I should have just knocked out the opponent directly. It was unnecessary to use that power. He panted with regret. Suddenly, his advisor appeared like a ghost, startling Kim SeoJoon nearly to death from a heart attack. She informed him that she had consulted many teachers and even the principal, all of whom had said no and shook their heads. Kim SeoJoon could only sigh in disappointment. These superiors really don't think like I do. Hey, listen to the whole story first, the advisor interrupted. The principal said that if it's Kim SeoJoon, then it's allowed. The advisor's sudden change of stance made Kim SeoJoon's emotions swing wildly, like a roller coaster. The principal only said it was possible. She wasn't sure because from the beginning, she said that using both methods at the same time was impossible. First of all, every creature can absorb and use a certain amount of mana. Mana is the essence of life's energy, so it cannot exceed the capacity of a living being. There is a limit to the resources a living being can endure, the limit of causality. Even using just one of the two is enough. A being that surpasses this inherent limit of causality may deteriorate or even vanish into nothingness. However, even if you, Kim SeoJoon, use both methods, there is still a possibility that your being will not deteriorate or disappear. This is because your causality has never been measured. No matter what the situation was before, your causality has never been measured. Do you remember the last time when there was no one else available? So I reported this to the principal. Since your causality hasn't been measured, you don't have a defined limit. Therefore, considering the retention of both Danjian effects, there is still a possibility that your being won't dissipate. This is what the principal herself said. She also said that using both Danjians at the same time requires attention to certain things. First, both must be activated simultaneously. Second, you must endure the tremendous burden of causality. The advisor rattled off to Kim SeoJoon. If you open both Danjians like this, the amount of mana needed to fill them will also increase. But that number doesn't simply double, it increases exponentially, which is fatal. Simple training won't be enough to compensate for this, so the use of the divine elixir Elisa to supplement mana is crucial. In other words, Kim SeoJoon will have to spend a lot of money on this. It's really adding insult to injury for someone already struggling financially. Seeing Kim SeoJoon cry in despair, the advisor suggested he consider this, since the principal wouldn't take the possibility of a transcendent being using both Danjians lightly. If this actually succeeded, many unimaginable things could happen. She said she had high hopes for him. The advisor smiled mischievously. When Kim SeoJoon expressed curiosity about the principal's identity, the advisor reminisced for a moment and then revealed that she was a second-ranked transcendent being. The first time Kim SeoJoon heard the term second-ranked transcendent being, he was quite surprised. Just as the advisor was about to tell Kim SeoJoon about the history of the Supreme Academy, SeoJoon suddenly opened the door and entered the room, startling the advisor, who quickly made his exit. At the same time, Jin Yeon appeared and announced that the second round had been agreed upon by everyone. Therefore, in the second round, we will change the rules a bit. How about we attack the dungeon with a team consisting of a student and a trainer, rather than just students? Jin Yeon smirked and said, if that's the case, Park SeoJoon and Kim SeoJoon might be on the same team. But SeoJoon is only a B-rank hunter, while the trainers of other teams are at least A rank. People have already said enough about Park SeoJoon. If this power gap is exposed, while Kim SeoJoon was still hesitating, SeoJoon immediately demanded that Jin Young raise the prize money. Kim SeoJoon was taken aback. Don't worry about me. As the director, I haven't been able to help you at all. Let me help this time. What they say doesn't mean anything to me. SeoJoon smiled and said to Kim SeoJoon. After thinking for a moment, Kim SeoJoon made a proposal to Jin Young, demanding that representatives of the top 3 academies should also participate to make it fair. If you give us 6 billion won in prize money up front, we will accept any rules you set. Otherwise, forget it. Seeing Kim SeoJoon being so straightforward, Jin Young, though pale, had to agree. The final rules for the 2 rounds were as follows. Representatives and student representatives from the Dream Academy, Huntermill, Gaeun, and Ali would form teams and attack the dungeon. The dungeon would be divided into Dungeon 1, Dungeon 2, and Dungeon 3. The students would enter Dungeon 1. The representatives would enter Dungeon 2 and fight solo there. If the mana stones obtained from each dungeon were placed on the pedestal, the boss in Dungeon 3 would be summoned, and everything would end when the students and representatives together killed the boss. The team with the shortest total time to clear Dungeon 1 and 2, and to kill the boss in Dungeon 3, would win. After receiving the 6 billion won, Kim SeoJoon immediately used it to purchase courses. At the testing grounds for the second round of the Dream Team, SeoJoon had been standing there waiting for Kim SeoJoon to come out for some time. SeoJoon was visibly tense, sweating profusely like rain. Knowing that SeoJoon wasn't as strong as the representatives, there was nothing she could change about it. However, the time for the second round was cumulative, not individual. She had to shorten her own time as much as possible to win this round. I've already opened my upper dungeon, SeoJoon thought to herself, but she wasn't sure if she could catch up with the former S-rank hunters. Lost in these miscellaneous thoughts, the announcement to enter inside suddenly rang out. Kim SeoJoon waved goodbye and quickly slipped inside. As soon as he set foot inside, a mountainous monster was already waiting for him. With such a concentrated gathering since the afternoon, it was convenient for Kim SeoJoon to handle it once and for all. Initially, Kim SeoJoon intended to swing his stick gently to disperse the mist. However, he slipped, causing the force to exceed his expectations. After a whirlwind fight with the monsters, Kim SeoJoon easily obtained the mana stone and quickly exited. While waiting for Park Soo-kun to return, Kim SeoJoon hastily placed the stone on the pillar to record the time. Unexpectedly, the scoreboard displaying Hunter Mill's results appeared, shocking him to the core. The time difference between Dungeon 1 and Dungeon 2 was significant because Dungeon 1 was for students, while Dungeon 2 was for representatives, which made sense. However, it was the opposite for his team. If he placed the stone now, he could completely win. But if Park Soo-kun lost to even one student, she would face harsh criticism. However, if he waited for her, he would completely lose the chance to win. Moreover, Dungeon 2 seemed highly challenging. Could Park Soo-kun really fail? Kim SeoJoon was confused, blaming himself for being too greedy for money, which prevented him from making a reasonable judgment. Looking at the scoreboard and recalling Soo-kun's words from earlier, Kim SeoJoon tightly gripped the mana stone in his hand, trembling with determination towards Soo-kun. Right now, she was struggling with a lizard-like monster spewing a sea of flames. Kim SeoJoon was probably waiting for her outside. Even if she couldn't be faster than him, she had to conquer this dungeon. Before the onslaught of the fiery smoke from the monster, Soo-kun continued to strive tirelessly. In reality, her skills were not outstanding. She was just the granddaughter of the Sword Saint, one of the heroes in the Great Flood War, whom her grandfather had personally trained. Despite this lineage, she was only ranked as a mediocre B-class hunter. Park Soo-kun deeply respected her grandfather, but also harbored resentment toward him for constant comparisons, which led her to also resent herself. In this moment of life and death, she remembered Kim SeoJoon's encouraging words and smile, which seemed to give her strength. 1 dot of admiration, 2 dots of unconsciousness. She knocked out the group of monsters with flat faces. When I first met Kim SeoJoon, I thought we would just use each other. I thought I could use this student to enhance the reputation of the Dream Hunter Academy. But the professional hunter test is coming soon, and this competition will likely end our relationship. Soo-kun thought as she struggled against the lizard monster spewing flames. Even though it's brief, it's time to end this fleeting relationship. Even if I don't have much, I want to help Kim SeoJoon a little. As long as I don't hinder him. Soo-kun thought as she held the mana stone tightly in her hand, tears welling up. Soo-kun stepped out, deeply moved, and unexpectedly saw Kim SeoJoon standing in front of the dungeon entrance, looking as if he had just come out, which made her feel extremely bitter. Why did you do that? Soo-kun cried tearfully, asking Kim SeoJoon about this accidental incident. Park Soo-kun, I do need money, but not to that extent. I can earn money any time, but a broken heart cannot be healed. Kim SeoJoon smiled and said, placing both stones on the platform. The system will calculate the total time. It's already said, if you want to win, you must find and defeat the boss within 48 seconds. Soo-kun, I really want to tell you this. If I'm alone, I can't get this far. So this time, I'm counting on you, and in the future too. You're the only one I can trust. If I faint, please take care of me," Kim SeoJoon said, every word making Park Soo-kun deeply moved, tears streaming down her face. After comforting Park Soo-kun, Kim SeoJoon immediately swung his weapon forward. There were only about 30 seconds left, just 30 seconds. There was no way to find and defeat the boss. Instead, he unexpectedly used his strong force to impact the dungeon, making it unable to resist anymore, causing the dungeon to collapse. Kim SeoJoon, the grand young man, spoke of acting too quickly, too dangerously. He had used Aura Sword, combining the power of a god with astounding effect. Feeling that this wasn't enough, he also drank a potion he had just purchased. In less than a second, a surge of magical power surged forth, overwhelming Soo-kun completely. Kim SeoJoon's entire body was enveloped in a tremendous field of energy, both types of Danjian combining together. Recalling the teachings of his teachers, Kim SeoJoon tightly gripped his staff, directing it from within and decisively swinging it outwards. The entire space followed suit, seeming to fracture and burst with each of his movements. Finally, a single piercing strike hit directly, incredibly powerful, each blow being exceptionally striking. A thunderous roar shook the heavens and the earth, flames erupting and blazing brightly, the scene blinding. The surroundings were no longer visible as the students and teachers of Dream Academy gaped in astonishment at Kim SeoJoon's pinnacle display just now, a shock that left them speechless. The Dream Academy's assault round ended in 41 seconds, something that had been impossible until now. Waking up abruptly, Kim SeoJoon jerked in surprise, realizing he was back in his hospital bed. Soo-kun hurriedly informed him that he only calmed down after winning. Seeing that Kim SeoJoon was unscathed, Park Soo-kun finally embarrassedly thanked him, their eyes exchanging affection and love. The romantic atmosphere abruptly disrupted by the sudden rush of reporters who burst into the room. There was only one individual Kim SeoJoon defeated, not the entire Dream Academy. What do you think about this statement? One reporter rushed up to Kim SeoJoon, pointing the mic straight at him. After a thoughtful pause, Kim SeoJoon finally spoke up. "I'm just a student of Dream Academy. Besides, I didn't really do much. I was just following the principal's instructions." Soo-kun was taken aback when Kim SeoJoon redirected the attention to her, the reporters quick to redirect their questions toward her, leaving her extremely flustered. Information about Kim SeoJoon has spread across various newspapers and media outlets, especially with Dream Academy's involvement. In this friendly competition, all eyes were on him, not only for defeating Lee Hyun, a legendary talent in professional hunting history, but also for demolishing the dungeon. It's truly an incredible story, almost like a battle of gods. However, even with Kim SeoJoon's incredible peak, the story has yet to be proven true. Now, let's put an end to the debate. The secret lies with the principal of Dream Academy. After mentioning Kim SeoJoon, a YouTuber redirected attention to Soo-kun, continuously praising her, suggesting that Kim SeoJoon could only achieve everything thanks to the synergy with her. Upon watching the clip, Kim SeoJoon was visibly delighted, agreeing that Soo-kun was the light of his life. On the way back to the academy, to fully absorb the effects of the divine potion, Kim SeoJoon coincidentally encountered Lee Hyun, who was seemingly waiting for him. Kim SeoJoon had no intention to engage with her and coldly walked past her. Lee Hyun was shocked by his indifferent attitude and tried to strike up a conversation after a moment of hesitation. There were rumors that Kim SeoJoon was the disciple of the Sword Saint, and Lee Hyun awkwardly asked why he was using a staff instead of a sword, suggesting Kim SeoJoon wasn't living up to the title. Kim SeoJoon didn't want to talk and quickly tried to leave, but Lee Hyun persisted with questions about everything from normal academy teachings to his eating habits and training methods. Frustrated, Kim SeoJoon tried to evade her by flying away using his skills, but Lee Hyun managed to keep up closely, which irritated Kim SeoJoon even more. He scolded her, comparing her persistence to a fly that wouldn't go away, asking if she had any more curiosity left. He suspected she wanted to find reasons to justify her loss to him, perhaps even intending to use the Sword Saint as an excuse. Lee Hyun defended herself, claiming she was just curious. Kim SeoJoon scratched his head in confusion, listening as Lee Hyun mentioned she was looking for Park Soo-kun. Immediately alert, Kim SeoJoon warned Lee Hyun not to follow and swiftly walked away. Reflecting after the friendly competition, Kim SeoJoon wondered where Park Soo-kun could have gone so suddenly. Park Soo-kun was currently kneeling at her grandfather's house, requesting to wield her sword again, which surprised the Sword Saint. It wasn't the first time she had asked to handle the sword herself. Why do you want to stand shoulder to shoulder with Kim SeoJoon? Do you intend to abandon your dream to follow that kid and become a professional hunter? The Sword Saint asked. I'm not abandoning my dream. I want to pursue a different path, Soo-kun replied firmly. Recalling Kim SeoJoon's previous words that dreams are verbs and professions are nouns, Soo-kun felt empowered. Kim SeoJoon had spent all his money on supplies, thinking it would cost him double, only to find out it was triple the amount, which was quite shocking. While he was pondering his financial headache, Hyuk Song-in suddenly appeared like a ghost, startling Kim SeoJoon. Every time I meet you, I can't help but be surprised. Even the Justice Church doesn't notice me, but you always seem to see me. I guess it's because I'm getting old, so my abilities aren't what they used to be, Kim SeoJoon remarked in amazement. Hyuk Song-in spoke softly. Is something wrong? How's your surveillance of the Justice Church going? Kim SeoJoon was curious about Hyuk Song-in's intentions. Before delving into the conversation, Hyuk Song-in asked about Minhyul's condition. Kim SeoJoon explained that Minhyul wasn't seriously injured and had already been discharged. That idiot said he only used one weapon. Give this to him, Hyuk Song-in said, handing over a note. I've made some notes so that next time he won't be easily defeated like that. I'll also give you the 3 billion I promised, Hyuk Song-in continued. Upon hearing the sum of 3 billion, Kim SeoJoon suddenly brightened. Besides Jung Jimin, the disciple of the Law Saint is also at Dream Academy, he mentioned casually, surprising Hyuk Song-in. Kim SeoJoon kept reminding Hyuk Song-in about the 10 billion for the Law Saint's disciples' care in a subtle yet tactful manner. Subtle enough? 3 billion should be enough, right, old man? Kim SeoJoon gently prodded. Suddenly, the Sword Saint appeared at the entrance of the academy without them realizing. The three exchanged glances warmly. Kim SeoJoon felt overwhelmed by the forceful presence of the two passionate old men. Kim SeoJoon was sweating profusely as he saw the two old men starting to argue heatedly, seemingly ready to fight right there. Unable to calm them down, Kim SeoJoon reluctantly drew his sword, which finally made the two pause. How could he become so strong in such a short time? They wondered, their hearts still racing. Kim SeoJoon was so frustrated that he began cursing incessantly, scolding the two old men for their childish behavior. Finally, Hyuk Song-in recalled the reason he had come. It seemed the Justice Church had some scheme involving a legendary beast, although it wasn't confirmed yet. The disciples had already started taking action. As Hyuk Song-in finished speaking, both Kim SeoJoon and the Sword Saint were taken aback. Do you think the actions of the sect regarding the legendary beast are excessive? The Sword Saint asked. Didn't I just say there's nothing certain yet? Hyuk Song-in responded. Regardless, from now on, we need to investigate thoroughly. So, Kim SeoJoon, can you help us with this? Hyuk Song-in asked. He couldn't handle this alone, especially considering the dangerous experiments the sect had been repeatedly conducting in the dungeons. You're about to participate in the selection exam for professional hunters, right? After that, you can enter any dungeon you want, Hyuk Song-in added, maintaining his bewildered expression. The Sword Saint wanted to know why Hyuk Song-in needed Kim SeoJoon's help, but Hyuk Song-in avoided answering. Seeing both old men gearing up for a confrontation again, Kim SeoJoon tried desperately to intervene and change the subject. Forget that. Why are you here, Sword Saint? Are you looking for Soo-kun? She said she had something to do, so she left earlier. I don't know where she went, Kim SeoJoon explained. The Sword Saint looked at Kim SeoJoon with a puzzled expression. What's so special about you that Soo-kun admires you so much, he wondered. Suddenly, a loud noise interrupted them, causing all three to immediately tense up and activate their alert mode. A figure rushed towards Kim SeoJoon from a distance, and upon closer inspection, Kim SeoJoon realized it was Lee Hyun, not a stranger. Lee Hyun was taking a stroll when she happened upon Dream Academy. Sensing a surge of energy emanating from it, she decided to peek inside. To her surprise, she was met with the fierce expression of the Sword Saint, intimidating enough to make her want to cry. Hyuk Sung-in and Kim SeoJoon seemed unconcerned with her sudden appearance, deeply engrossed in discussing a dungeon infiltration they had just undertaken. Just as she arrived, Lee Hyun witnessed Kim SeoJoon demanding money from Hyuk Sung-in, which left her shaken and somewhat shocked. Despite having lived through countless hardships, she had never witnessed something like this before. Kim SeoJoon agreed to settle for a sum of 13 billion won, plus an additional 3 billion for Min Yul's care. Lee Hyun wondered once more if he truly needed money more than her magic. If he desired, she could personally teach him instead of just imparting her magic. Hyuk Sung-in tried to salvage some dignity in his final remarks, but found Kim SeoJoon's repeated refusals increasingly unsettling. It was the first time she had seen someone refuse to become a disciple of a hero like him. The Sword Saint teased Hyuk Sung-in in a way that left Lee Hyun wondering how Kim SeoJoon only asked for money and nothing else. The two old men continued to argue fiercely, exhausting Kim SeoJoon even more. Lee Hyun watched intently, unable to tear her eyes away, sweating nervously and feeling she had perhaps misunderstood the situation. After Hyuk Sung-in left, the curious Sword Saint inquired about the relationship between Kim SeoJoon and Hyuk Sung-in, which wasn't exactly formal, but could be termed as a business relationship. Kim SeoJoon brushed off the question and now turned his attention to Lee Hyun. Seeing Lee Hyun flustered and trying to dismiss the incident, Kim SeoJoon, with his hot temper, brandished his sword threateningly, frightening her immensely. Lee Hyun expressed her desire to join Dream Academy loudly, startling Kim SeoJoon. "Why do you want to join Dream Academy? What's the rush?" he asked suspiciously. "The professional hunter selection exam is just around the corner. What's your purpose? Or are you a spy from Hunter Mill Academy?" Kim SeoJoon's wary gaze made Lee Hyun incredibly anxious, despite her attempts to explain that she genuinely wanted to enroll. Even Kim SeoJoon couldn't believe the sight, and the Sword Saint, seeing the situation, left as well. Left alone with Kim SeoJoon, Lee Hyun's desperation reached its peak at being alone with him. "Sukun has already left," Kim SeoJoon informed her. Lee Hyun, relieved, was about to use this as an excuse to leave when Kim SeoJoon threw something heavy at her, making her unable to escape. No matter how much mana she freed, she couldn't lift it up.